In front of 200 people, my parents gave my sister $55 million, then took my car keys and shut off my card. I stepped out into the night with one suitcase and nowhere left to turn. But then, can you imagine standing outside your childhood home on Christmas Eve, watching the warm glow from the windows, knowing that just 1 hour earlier, your own family had coldly, cruelly, and publicly decided you were worthless? That's where I was. Freezing, shattered, and utterly betrayed. That iron gate, the one that had always welcomed me, felt like a prison bar that night. Christmas Eve, freezing rain, and I was clinging to it, my breath fogging in the December air. Inside, my family's Greenwich estate glowed with warm, golden light, a picture of holiday perfection. Outside, just me and my beat-up, 10-year-old Subaru. The one I'd worked so hard for. I reached for the door handle, whispering, but I paid for it. I swear I stammered the words, reaching for the keyring. Every single payment, for 5 years, out of my own pocket. But then a hand shot through the bars. Preston's hand. He snatched the keys right out of my grasp before I could even close my fingers around them. His voice was flat, ice-cold, the same tone he used when he was firing someone. Paid through the corporate leasing structure, pre-tax bonuses, he said, like it was a legal loophole designed just to screw me over. Technically, you signed over the title to the holding company 3 years ago for tax efficiency. Remember? You no longer work for us. You don't get the perks. Then, he just turned his back. He walked away, my keys jingling in his palm like loose change, that sound fading as he climbed the steps. He disappeared into the house without a single backward glance, leaving me gripping my small suitcase, shivering. My brain screamed, "Move. Get out of here." But some stupid, broken part of me just stood there, waiting for him to come back. Just an hour before, I'd actually walked through those very gates, stupidly thinking I'd sleep in my old room. I'd lost my PR job just 3 days before Christmas. Whole department, gone, sliced away like unwanted fat. My severance? Enough for maybe 2 months' rent if I stretched it. I thought I had time to figure things out. I thought I had a home. Instead, I walked straight into Kinsley's engagement party. Crystal chandeliers glittered. A string quartet played. 200 people in designer cocktail attire watched my baby sister, Kinsley, show off her ring under soft, romantic lights. And there I was, still in my damp work clothes from the subway, feeling like a ghost. Then, Preston tapped his champagne glass for silence, right there in the foyer. The entire family trust. $55 million. He announced it had been transferred entirely to Kinsley. Not split. Not held. Transferred. Final. My stomach dropped. Then came the knife twist. Miranda has demonstrated a consistent pattern of professional failure. His voice boomed across the marble floors. This family rewards success, not mediocrity. God, I hate remembering this part, but I begged. I swallowed my pride, begged to just stay a few weeks, through the holidays, until I found a new job. I promised to be quiet, to stay out of the way, to help. That's when Genevieve, my mother, set down her wine glass with a sharp click. "You're a burden, Miranda," she hissed. "We're not running a charity for failed adults. You need to leave. Tonight." The entire party went silent. 200 people, all staring at me, my purse still on my shoulder, my face burning with humiliation. I walked out through a side door, grabbed the suitcase I'd packed that morning, the one I thought I'd unpack into my childhood dresser. And like an obedient daughter, because some habits are just that hard to break, I walked straight to that front gate. Which is exactly where I am now. I stood there, paralyzed, a stupid part of me still begging for him to come back. 5, maybe 10 minutes passed, I lost all track of time. My phone died in my pocket, killed by the brutal cold. Then, the house lights started winking out, one by one. The ballroom. The dining room. Upstairs, bedroom by bedroom, like stars fading at dawn. My mother's room, dark last. I could almost see her, pulling the curtains, settling into bed, not a single thought for her daughter freezing outside. My finger hovered over the intercom button. Just one buzz. I could ask for a blanket, a taxi, anything. But the thought of hearing my father's voice, crackling through that speaker, dripping with satisfaction as he said no, it twisted my stomach. I gripped my suitcase handle instead. The metal burned, a cold that seeped through my gloves, through my skin, straight to the bone. But I held on. I turned away. Away from that gate. Away from that house. Away from every Christmas morning, every summer barbecue, every graduation photo that had happened behind those walls. Portchester was 3 miles east. I knew because I used to drive past it every day, back when I had a car, back when I had a job, back when I had a family. I started walking into the absolute dark. The freezing rain turned the road into a black mirror reflecting nothing. My suitcase wheels caught on every crack, a constant, grating reminder of my pathetic situation. Behind me, the estate vanished around a bend. I didn't look back. I couldn't look back. Because if I did, I might stay there forever, waiting for someone who would never, ever come. Those 3 miles to Portchester felt like crossing into another country. My feet went numb somewhere around mile 2, and every step sent a jolt of raw pain through my ankles. My cheap flats had rubbed the skin raw. The suitcase kept jamming on chunks of ice, forcing me to drag it like I was hauling a dead body. Just after midnight, I passed a Motel 6. That flickering red and white neon sign, promising vacancy, felt like a beacon of hope. My luck had to turn, right? I still had the emergency credit card tucked deep in my wallet. The one Preston had given me years ago, for true emergencies only. Well, being locked out of your family home on Christmas Eve, in sub-freezing temperatures, seemed to qualify. The night clerk looked half asleep, shrouded behind bulletproof glass. He slid the card reader through the slot. I watched it process for what felt like an hour, my heart hammering. Then it beeped. Declined. Try again. My voice cracked. He swiped it twice more. Same result. Says here the card was reported stolen, he said, peering at his screen, his expression shifting from bored to suspicious. About 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes. That was right after Preston snatched my car keys. Right after he walked back into that warm, glowing house and closed the door. My own father had called in a fraud report while I was walking in the pouring, freezing rain. I leave without another word. What was there to say? The clerk was already reaching for his phone, probably calling the cops about the soggy woman with the stolen credit card. The only shelter I found was a bus stop, 3 walls of scratched plexiglass and a cold, metal bench. I collapsed onto it, the cold instantly seeping through my drenched coat, chilling me to the bone. My teeth chattered so violently, I bit my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Then I heard it, a soft whimpering. Tucked behind the post was a dog, maybe 40 pounds, tied with a frayed rope. Its fur was matted, soaked through, and it was shaking worse than I was. Someone had just abandoned it. Tied it up and left, just like my family. Had left me at that gate. I rummaged through my purse, my fingers numb, and found half a stale turkey and Swiss sandwich, wrapped in wax paper from 2 days ago. I crouched down, breaking off tiny pieces, holding them out. The dog took them so gently, its tail giving one single, grateful thump against the concrete. We match, I whispered, both of us thrown away on Christmas Eve. I shared the entire sandwich, bite for bite. When we finished, the dog pressed against my leg, and I wrapped my arm around it, trying to steal whatever pathetic warmth we could give each other. That's when I saw her. At the far end of the bench, tucked deep into the shadows. An elderly woman, maybe 70, in a thin house dress and wet bedroom slippers that absolutely did not belong outside. Her gray hair hung in icy strings around her face. Cold night, she rasped, her voice rattling like loose change. The worst. I pulled my coat tighter, but it was useless. The wool was completely soaked. Nice coat, she shivered violently. Warm. It had been warm. 3 hours ago, it had been warm. I looked at her, truly looked. At her fragile frame, her blue lips. And I stood up. I shrugged off my coat. It was the only thing of value I had left, the only barrier between me and hypothermia. Here, I said, draping it over her shoulders. She stared at me like I'd just handed her $1 million. You'll freeze, she warned, you'll freeze faster. I sat back down, in just my blouse and slacks, and the cold hit me like a physical punch. The wind sliced through the wet fabric, and I started shaking so hard my vision blurred. But watching her pull my coat tight, seeing a flicker of color return to her face, made the cold feel a little less like dying. 10, maybe 15 minutes passed. I was starting to drift into that dangerous, sleepy abyss when bright headlights sliced through the rain. Black SUVs. 3 of them, moving in perfect formation, like a presidential motorcade. They pulled up to the bus stop with military precision. A man in a dark suit stepped out, holding an umbrella. "Miss Morris." His voice was Irish, clipped. "I'm Declan O'Connor. Miss Vance would like a word." The elderly woman stood up. She wasn't shaking anymore. She removed my coat, and underneath, she was wearing a perfectly dry cashmere sweater. The wet slippers were gone, replaced by leather boots that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Adelaide Vance. She extended her hand, like we were meeting at a country club, not a freezing bus stop where I'd just given away my last possession. "You passed." My brain short-circuited. "Passed what?" "The test," she said, gesturing to Declan, who was already escorting me toward the middle SUV. "I have a talent for finding people who choose freezing over watching someone else suffer." She paused at the SUV door, glancing back towards the empty road leading to Greenwich. "My security team has been tracking your father's movements all night. We knew he'd kicked you out. I wanted to see if you'd break. Or if you'd survive." Sitting on that bench was uncomfortable, but necessary, to see your true character up close. The car's heated interior felt like stepping into heaven. Someone wrapped a thick blanket around my shoulders as Adelaide settled across from me, now looking every inch the billionaire I realized she must be. Declan handed me a folder. "Your credit report, Ms. Morris." My hands were shaking as I opened it. There it was, my signature on a loan guarantee. $500,000 to Morris Holdings, LLC. The date, 3 days ago. "I never signed this," I whispered. "No," Adelaide confirmed, her voice devoid of emotion. "Your father forged it. He needed a personal guarantor for a commercial loan that was already underwater. He used you as the fall guy before he kicked you out." The words hit me like individual punches. Not just disinherited. Criminally liable. My own father hadn't just abandoned me. He had weaponized my entire existence. Something shifted inside me then. Not sadness, not despair. It was pure, crystalline clarity, sharp and cold as that December wind. "You're not just homeless," Adelaide continued, her eyes fixed on mine. "You're facing $500,000 in fraudulent debt that could follow you for decades. Preston Morris isn't just mean, dear. He's a criminal who monetized his own daughter." She leaned forward. "I'm offering you $215,000 a year to train under me. 9 months of hell. But at the end, you'll have the skills and resources to not just survive what he did to you, but to thrive despite it." I should have felt desperate, overwhelmed, maybe even ridiculously grateful. Instead, I felt strategic. I needed power. I needed money. Not just to escape what Preston had done, but to weaponize it right back at him. "When do I start?" I asked. Adelaide smiled. "Right now." My first lesson in hell came in February. I was standing at the head of a gleaming marble conference table in downtown Manhattan, trying to present Adelaide's proposal for mixed-income housing. A developer in a gray suit cut me off mid-sentence. "Who did you say you were again?" My throat seized up. Just 6 months ago, I could command a room. Now, I was fumbling over basic introductions, my hands shaking as I gripped the presentation remote. "Miranda Morris, Executive Director of..." Right. The trust fund kid." He leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. "Adelaide, with all due respect, this is a waste of our time. Send someone who actually knows construction." Adelaide didn't defend me. She just gave a subtle nod towards the door. I gathered my materials, my cheeks burning, as 12 pairs of eyes watched me leave like a child dismissed from the adult table. In the elevator going down, she finally spoke. "How did that feel?" "Humiliating." "Good," she said, pressing the lobby button. "Now you know what's at stake when you walk into the next one unprepared." The very next morning, she piled a stack of textbooks on my desk, forensic accounting, construction management. The pile reached my chin. "You have 3 months to master the basics," she told me. "After that, you'll shadow Declan on site inspections." March through May, I drowned in load-bearing calculations and zoning ordinances. My apartment became a cave of highlighted pages and cold coffee. I learned to read blueprints in the dim light of 4 a.m. because that was the only quiet hour before Adelaide's car arrived at 6. The site inspections were even worse. Declan handed me a hard hat and steel-toed boots on my first day at the construction site in Port Chester, the very same town where Adelaide had found me shivering at that bus stop. "Keep up," he said, and walked into the mud without looking back. I quickly learned that construction sites smell like diesel fuel and wet concrete. That contractors don't soften their language for women in pencil skirts. That my Yale degree meant absolutely nothing when I couldn't tell the difference between rebar and conduit. By June, my hands didn't look like they belonged to someone who once got weekly manicures. The calluses formed slowly, earned from holding clipboards in the rain and climbing scaffold stairs in the summer heat. In July, Adelaide assigned me Project Beacon, her affordable housing initiative, 20 units for single mothers transitioning out of shelters. The budget was razor-thin, the timeline impossible. The location was a forgotten lot in Port Chester that flooded every time it rained. "Fix it," Adelaide said, and left me standing in ankle-deep water with a drainage problem and 3 contractors who refused to return my calls. I fixed it. Not because I was some natural genius, but because failure now meant proving Preston right. I spent August learning pump systems and French drains. I negotiated with suppliers who tried to overcharge me until I showed them I'd done my homework. I earned the respect of my crew by showing up before them every morning and leaving after them every night, my rubber boots caked in the same mud that covered their work clothes. By September, we were ahead of schedule. The foundation poured. The framing up. I stood in what would someday be someone's kitchen and felt something unfamiliar. Pride, maybe. Or just the profound relief of not having failed. Yet, that's when Kinsley found me. I was inspecting the electrical rough-in one Thursday afternoon when I heard the unmistakable click-clack of heels on plywood. She picked her way across the muddy construction site like she was navigating a minefield, her phone already out, already recording. "Miranda." Her voice, that artificial sweetness she used right before drawing blood. "Oh my God, is that really you?" I was in muddy jeans and a flannel shirt. My hair hadn't seen a salon in 9 months, just pulled back in a utilitarian ponytail. My boots were caked in clay that felt permanently fused. She circled me with her phone camera. "This is so sad," she purred. "My sister used to work in PR, and now she's literally digging ditches." She zoomed in on my boots. The Morris legacy, everyone. How embarrassing. Every fiber of my being screamed to say something sharp, to defend myself. But that old instinct kicked in, the one that had kept me silent through years of her casual cruelty. I just stood there, burning, as she got her footage. She posted it before she even left the site. By the time I was back in my truck, my phone was exploding. The post had been shared hundreds of times across Greenwich social circles. The comments rolled in like brutal punches. She really fell from grace. Imagine losing everything and ending up here. This is what happens when you disappoint your family. I sat in the truck, mud tracked all over the floor mats, and felt the shame creep up my neck like a hot, itchy rash. This was it. Exactly what Preston predicted. I was failing. I was embarrassing the name. I was always meant to be discarded. Then my phone rang. It was Adelaide. "I saw the post," she said. "I'm sorry. I'll figure out how to. Come to my office." Now, I drove to Manhattan, fully expecting to be fired. Instead, Adelaide was sitting at her desk with Declan, both of them staring intently at Kinsley's Instagram post on a laptop screen. "This is actually perfect," Adelaide said, a strange glint in her eye. I must have looked utterly bewildered, because Declan just smirked. "You're a PR executive, Miranda," he said. "So do PR." They were right. I'd spent 5 years crafting narratives for corporate clients. I knew how to spin a story. More importantly, I knew exactly how to make Kinsley look like the spoiled villain she actually was. That evening, I filmed my response video. Not in my soft-lit apartment, but back at the construction site. Standing in the same mud where Kinsley had ambushed me. My boots were still dirty. My flannel still wrinkled. But my voice? My voice was steady. My sister is right, I began, looking directly into the camera. I'm not in PR anymore. I'm building affordable housing for single mothers. 20 families who need a safe place to raise their children. I turned the camera to show the framed building behind me. This is Project Beacon. If you think helping people is embarrassing, then yes, I'm deeply embarrassed. But if you think building something that matters is worth your time, we're accepting donations. I posted it at 11 p.m. By morning, the tide had completely turned. The comments flooded in, but they were different now. People called Kinsley elitist, shallow, out of touch. Someone created a side-by-side comparison of her designer handbag collection and my mud-covered boots with the caption, "Guess which Morris sister is actually working?" The donation page for Project Beacon crashed from the sheer traffic. We raised $40,000 in 3 days. Adelaide found me on site the following Monday. "You see it now, don't you?" she asked. "See what?" "That her opinion has no power unless you give it power." She was right. For the first time since that chilling Christmas Eve, I realized I wasn't waiting for my family's approval anymore. I had Adelaide. I had Declan. I had a crew of contractors who respected me because I earned it, not because my last name used to mean something. I had 20 future tenants whose children would grow up in homes I helped build. Kinsley's post was supposed to destroy me. Instead, it just proved how far I'd already come. Later that afternoon, as I was finishing a site inspection, Declan pulled me aside. His face was grim. "We need to talk about your father." He handed me his tablet. On the screen was a grainy, but perfectly clear, security photo from a Manhattan restaurant. Preston, leaning forward, eager, desperate, across from a man named Julian Thorne. I recognized Thorne from the financial news. His company, Quantum Energy Tech, was the latest name on a long list. "Thorne's fund is under federal investigation," Declan said quietly. "Your father's trying to clear his debts with a miracle investment." I looked at the photo again. That same greedy, desperate expression Preston had when he snatched my keys through the gate, like he was entitled to take whatever he needed to save himself. I handed the tablet back. Something cold, not anger, not satisfaction, but pure, calculating clarity settled in my chest. "How long until it collapses?" I asked. 6 months, maybe less. I nodded slowly, watching the construction crew pack up their tools as the sun set. "Then we have time to prepare." Declan studied my face. "You're not going to warn him." It wasn't a question. "No," I said. "I'm going to watch." The very next day, back at Adelaide's office, Declan slid a manila folder across her polished mahogany desk like he was dealing cards in a high-stakes poker game. I'd learned to read his tells. That smooth, deliberate motion meant he'd found something that made him furious. "Quantum Energy Tech," he announced. "Your father's been meeting with Julian Thorne twice a week for the last month." I opened the folder. Investment prospectus. Glossy photos of solar panels that probably only existed in a graphic designer's imagination. Projected returns that would make Bernie Madoff blush. "It's a Ponzi scheme," Adelaide stated from her chair by the window, no question in her voice. "The FBI's been building a case for 8 months. Declan tapped a page near the bottom. "They're waiting for Thorne to collect enough deposits to make the charges stick. Maybe another 2 months before they move." I studied the minimum investment requirement, $500,000. The exact amount Preston owed on the loan he'd forged in my name, plus interest. The math was too clean to be a coincidence. He was desperate. He thought this was his way out. "We could warn him," Adelaide said, but her voice held no conviction. She knew what I was about to say. "If we warn him, he'll know we've been watching. He'll scramble. He might even try to implicate me further in his debt." I stood, walked to the window. Below, construction crews were framing the final building of Project Beacon. Drywall going up. Affordable housing that would actually help people instead of lining some con artist's pockets. "We need him to commit fully." "So we do nothing?" Declan sounded skeptical. "No," I said, turning back to face them. We create the conditions for him to destroy himself. He just needs the right push. 3 days later, the lawsuit arrived. My phone buzzed just as a process server caught me leaving the construction site, handing me the papers with an apologetic shrug. I read them standing in the parking lot, cement dust settling on my boots. Morris Holdings, LLC, Miranda Morris. Violation of non-disclosure agreement. Damages sought, $100,000. The NDA was from 6 years ago, a boilerplate document from when Preston briefly made me a junior analyst. It was pure harassment. Spite, wrapped in legal letterhead. But it was also something else. I read between the lines, calculated the timing. Preston needed liquid cash for Thorne's scheme. The mansion was leveraged to the hilt, and banks wouldn't touch him after the forged loan scandal nearly went public. This wasn't about justice. It was about extracting money from his only remaining source, his daughter's new salary. I drove straight to Adelaide's estate. She read the complaint twice, her expression hardening. "This is extortion," she said finally. "It's desperation disguised as power." I sat across from her, my hands steady on my knees. He needs $100,000 to complete his buy-in with Thorne. The mansion equity gets him to $400,000. This lawsuit covers the gap. "You want to settle?" Adelaide didn't sound surprised. "Immediately. No negotiations. Full amount." Declan looked up from his laptop. "That makes you look weak. Your father will think he can squeeze you anytime he needs cash." "Good," I said, meeting his eyes. "Let him think that." Understanding dawned across Adelaide's face. She set down the papers, leaned back in her chair, a slight smile touching her lips, the kind you see on a chess master who's just spotted checkmate in 6 moves. "You're handing him the rope," she said softly. "I'm handing him exactly enough rope." I pulled out my phone, already drafting an email to my lawyer. He thinks I'm paying because I'm terrified, because I know my place. But what I'm really doing is ensuring he has absolutely no excuse not to invest every single penny he can scrape together. The settlement conference took place in a sterile, gray corporate office that reeked of stale coffee and desperate attorneys. Preston arrived with Genevieve and their lawyer, a tired man who looked like he deeply regretted his retainer agreement. They were dressed for battle, Preston in his sharp power suit, Genevieve in pearls that probably cost more than my first apartment's rent. Me? I wore mud-stained work pants and a Project Beacon polo shirt. Came straight from the construction site, deliberately not changing. The contrast was palpable. Preston's lawyer launched into his practice spiel: violation of trust, damage to company reputation, sanctity of binding agreements. I let him drone on for exactly 4 minutes before I cut him off. "We'll pay the full amount. Today." The room went dead silent. Preston's lawyer blinked, twice, like he hadn't heard me right. "You're not going to negotiate?" Preston sounded almost disappointed. He'd clearly been gearing up for a fight, probably had a whole speech about family loyalty and respect tucked away. "No point," I said. I signed the settlement agreement without even reading it. My own lawyer shifted uncomfortably beside me, but he'd been briefed. He knew this was strategy, not surrender. "Transfer the funds this afternoon." I stood to leave. Genevieve was staring at me, a mixture of confusion and contempt on her face. She'd expected tears, maybe begging. Instead, I was checking my phone for messages from the site foreman. "Smart choice, Miranda." Preston's voice followed me to the door. "Maybe you're finally learning how the world works." I paused, turned back. For the first time since we'd sat down, I looked him directly in the eye, my expression calm, utterly neutral. The face I'd practiced in the mirror for exactly this kind of situation. "Sometimes the best move is no move at all," I said. His brow furrowed slightly. He didn't understand. That was fine. He would. Back in my car, I sat in the parking garage for a full minute before starting the engine. My hands weren't shaking. My breathing was steady. 10 months ago, I would have been a wreck, devastated by their contempt, crushed by this public humiliation. But now? Nothing but cold, hard clarity. I texted Declan, "It's done. Money transfers in 3 hours." His response was immediate. "Thorne's office confirmed Preston has an appointment tomorrow morning. Wire transfer scheduled for tomorrow afternoon." A small smile touched my lips. The pieces were moving exactly as predicted. Preston would get his settlement money by dinner. He'd combine it with the high-interest hard money loan he'd taken against the mansion last week, the one with the immediate foreclosure clause buried deep in Section 14. Declan had found that detail yesterday, highlighted it in yellow. By tomorrow night, Preston would have dumped everything into Julian Thorne's investment fund. Everything. The house. The settlement money. Probably Genevieve's jewelry, if he could liquidate it fast enough. And in about 8 weeks, the FBI would freeze every asset Thorne controlled. I pulled out of the parking garage into afternoon traffic. My phone buzzed. A text from Kinsley. Posted to her Instagram story 10 minutes ago. Sister paid up without a fight. Guess she finally knows her place. Some people are born leaders, others are born followers. Family hierarchy. Know your worth. The post already had 3,000 likes. Comments flooded in from Greenwich society, from people I used to know. They thought they were watching my humiliation. They had no idea they were watching me hand my father the shovel he'd used to bury himself. I just handed them the shovel. All of them. And they were so eager to start digging, they couldn't see the ground crumbling beneath their feet. The trap was armed. Now, I just had to wait for it to spring. The call came on a Tuesday morning in late November, exactly 1 month after I'd handed Preston that settlement check. I was reviewing architectural plans for Project Beacon's second phase when my assistant knocked. Miss Morris, your family is in the lobby. They don't have an appointment. I glanced at Declan, who was leaning casually against my office door frame. His expression didn't change, but I caught the slight lift of his eyebrow. We both knew. The FBI raided quantum energy tech this morning, he said quietly. Confirmed Ponzi scheme. Assets frozen. There it was. The trap. Sprung. Exactly as predicted. Send them up, I told my assistant. When they entered, I didn't stand. It was the first thing Preston noticed. I saw the shock register on his face. No jumping up to greet him, no offering coffee, no nervous chatter to smooth over the awkwardness. They looked terrible. Preston's shirt was wrinkled, a button missing. Genevieve's makeup was smeared under her eyes. Kinsley's hair, usually flat-ironed to perfection, hung limp and unwashed. Miranda, Preston's voice cracked on my name. We need to talk. Family business. I simply gestured to the chairs across from my desk. They sat. I waited. There's been a misunderstanding with an investment, Preston began, his hands visibly shaking as he gripped the armrests. A temporary liquidity issue. The hard money loan on the house has an acceleration clause, and we need bridge financing. $3.5 million. Just for 30 days, until we can restructure. I let the silence stretch. 5 seconds. 10. Preston's jaw tightened. We're family, Genevieve piped up, her voice thin and reedy. You have resources now. Adelaide Vance's resources. Surely the foundation can. The Vance Foundation, I interrupted, my voice perfectly calm, is a charitable organization with a fiduciary duty to serve its mission. I cannot authorize personal loans to family members using donor funds. Don't give me that corporate double talk. Preston snapped, some of his old authority, that edge that used to make me flinch, briefly resurfacing. You're the incoming CEO. You have discretion. You could help us if you wanted to. Could I? I leaned back in my chair. Walk me through the math, Dad. You took the $100,000 from our settlement and invested it with Julian Thorne. You also took out a hard money loan against the Greenwich house. What was the interest rate on that loan? His face went utterly pale. 18%, I continued, my voice betraying no emotion, with an immediate foreclosure clause upon default. You put everything into quantum energy tech. And now the FBI has frozen those assets because Thorne was running a Ponzi scheme. How much of the house payment did you miss? We can fix this, Genevieve whispered. We just need time. You thought I settled that lawsuit because I was weak, I said, my voice level almost gentle. You thought I paid you that money because I was terrified of you, because I knew my place. Kinsley's head snapped up. You didn't know your place. You paid up like, I gave you exactly enough rope to hang yourselves. The words came out flat, factual, devoid of anger. I knew you needed liquid cash for Thorne's scheme. The minimum buy-in was $100,000. You'd already leveraged everything else. I didn't push you off the cliff, Dad. I just stepped out of the way while you ran toward it. Preston surged to his feet, eyes blazing. You set us up. You knew it was a scam. I suspected it was a scam, I corrected, holding his gaze. You're the one who did zero due diligence. You're the one who signed mortgage documents with predatory terms. You made every choice here. This is extortion. Preston shouted. You manipulated us into what? Making a bad investment? Taking out a risky loan. I finished for him. I didn't forge your signature on anything. That last word landed with the weight of a hammer. We both knew what I was referencing. I didn't commit fraud. I just gave you money and watched you destroy yourselves with it. Genevieve was openly crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Please. We'll lose everything. The house is all we have. You have each other, I said, a faint echo of her words from that Christmas Eve. Isn't that what you told me? Family helps family. Kinsley, utterly frantic, pulled out her phone, hands trembling. Her eyes darted around the room, manic, like a trapped animal desperate for an escape route, hoping to control the narrative before the FBI press release hit the evening news. I'm going live right now, she threatened, her thumb hovering. I'm telling everyone what you're doing. Everyone will know you let your own family become homeless. Go ahead, I said, nodding towards her phone. She fumbled with the screen, propped it against a stack of files. The red light blinked on. Hey, guys. So I'm here in my sister's office, Kinsley began, her voice shaking. She's the new CEO of this huge foundation, and she's refusing to help our family even though we're about to lose our house. She has millions of dollars, and she won't. That's when Declan stepped forward, placing a manila folder on my desk. I opened it, though I already knew what was inside. Screenshots. Dozens of them. Kinsley's old Instagram posts about me. The construction site photo. Comments calling me pathetic, a failure, an embarrassment to the Morris name. And behind those? More screenshots. Direct messages from Kinsley to her friends, laughing about how they'd bled Miranda dry with the lawsuit. How stupid I'd been to pay up so easily. Your followers might be interested in some context, I said quietly. About how you spent the last year mocking me online. About how that settlement you celebrated was intended to fund a Ponzi scheme. Kinsley's face went white. She grabbed for her phone, but the damage was done. The live stream was already filling with comments. I could see them scrolling past on her screen before she killed the feed. Preston tried one last time. No shouting now. His voice was small, broken. You're my daughter. I was your daughter, I corrected him, looking him straight in the eye. Christmas Eve. Outside the gate. That's when I stopped. We made mistakes, Genevieve whispered. Parents make mistakes. You didn't make a mistake, I countered. You made a choice. You chose Kinsley. You chose the money. You chose to lock me out in freezing rain after forging my name on a loan document. Those weren't mistakes. Those were decisions. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, suffocating. Preston's shoulders sagged, all that arrogance, that absolute certainty of entitlement, crumbling into something pathetic and desperate. The foreclosure proceedings start in 72 hours, Declan announced from the doorway, his voice flat. You should consult with a bankruptcy attorney. They left without another word. Preston couldn't even look at me. Genevieve stumbled, and Kinsley had to steady her. Through my office window, I watched them cross the parking lot to a dented sedan, nothing like the Mercedes they used to drive. Within hours, Kinsley's Instagram exploded. Not with sympathy. With pure, unadulterated rage. People dug up every cruel post she'd ever made about me. Screenshots of her settlement celebration circulated with hashtags about karma and schadenfreude. By evening, the Greenwich society groups were buzzing. The Morris family wasn't just broke. They were pariahs. Within a week, the house foreclosed. I didn't attend the auction. Declan sent me a photo, though. The Greenwich estate, empty, dark, a bank seizure notice plastered on the front door. After that, they scattered. Different cheap apartments in different towns. Kinsley moved in with a college friend. Preston and Genevieve rented a tiny one-bedroom in Stamford, sleeping on a pull-out sofa because they couldn't afford furniture. When I heard these details, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. not guilt. Just a vast, clean emptiness where my family used to live inside my chest. Fast forward exactly 1 year. Christmas Eve again. The ballroom doors of the new Vance Foundation headquarters slid open with a whisper, revealing 200 guests in elegant evening wear. It was Project Beacon's grand opening. I smoothed the charcoal silk of my dress, feeling the pleasant weight of Adelaide's emerald pendant at my throat. It had belonged to her mother. She'd clasped it around my neck an hour ago, without ceremony, just a brief, meaningful squeeze of my shoulder. "You've done something remarkable here," she said now, standing beside me as we surveyed the glittering crowd. 76 years old and sharper than anyone half her age. 40 families housed. Employment programs running. All of it under budget. Through the soaring floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the completed housing complex. Lights glowed in every single unit. Families unpacking boxes. Children running through brightly lit hallways. The single mothers I'd worked alongside for 9 months, the ones who had taught me that dignity isn't inherited, it's built with your own hands, in the mud. Declan appeared at my elbow, his expression carefully neutral. "We have a situation at the entrance." I knew before he said it. Some part of me had been waiting for this all night. The Morris family attempted to enter without invitations. They're claiming they're here to network with potential donors. His mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. "Your father is wearing a suit that's seen far better days. Your mother keeps adjusting her coat. Your sister is filming the whole thing." He paused. "And I informed them they're on the permanent exclusion list." He handed me 3 crisp paper vouchers. I offered them these. Soup kitchen, 3 blocks south. Open until 10. The only help Miss Morris is willing to offer. I took the vouchers, feeling their insignificant weight. Not much. Just enough. Adelaide touched my arm. "You don't have to see them." But I did. Some part of me needed to look through that glass one final time. I walked to the mezzanine overlook. The floor-to-ceiling glass wall offered a perfect, silent view of the circular drive below, a stark separation between the warmth of the gala and the freezing night outside. Preston stood under the portico lights, his shoulders hunched against the cold. Genevieve clutched her purse like it might fly away. Kinsley held her phone at arm's length, trying to get the building in frame, probably preparing some self-pitying post about being wrongfully excluded. They looked so small from up here. So ordinary. Just 3 people who made monumentally bad choices and were finally living with the consequences. Preston saw me. He looked up, locking eyes with me through the thick, soundproof glass. His face shifted, and he pushed forward, but Declan stepped smoothly into his path. I watched my father's mouth move, saw him gesture emphatically. Then he pointed up at me, and his expression crumbled into something I couldn't quite decipher. Desperation? Rage? From this distance, it was hard to tell. His lips formed words I could read even through the glass. "Your mother would want." I didn't turn away dramatically. I simply stepped back from the window, letting the heavy velvet curtains obscure his view of me. I turned toward the warmth and light, and the 200 people who had chosen to show up tonight because they believed in what we had built. Through the glass, I caught one last glimpse of Declan handing Preston the vouchers. I saw my father crumple them in his fist. I saw Genevieve pull her coat tighter as freezing rain began to fall, the same December storm that seemed to come every year like clockwork. They turned away into the cold night, into the dark, into whatever comes next for people who mistake their children for ATM machines. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel much of anything except the pleasant weight of Adelaide's necklace and the solid warmth of the room at my back. "Miss Morris." One of the Project Beacon mothers approached, her gap-toothed 6-year-old daughter in a velvet dress clutching her hand. "We wanted to thank you. Maya starts at her new school in January." I knelt down to their level, looking into the bright eyes of a child who would grow up in a warm, safe home because 40 people had decided to build something better. "You're going to do amazing things," I told her. Later, after the speeches and champagne toasts, I stood alone on the balcony with my glass. The housing complex spread below, every window glowing golden against the December dark. Families visible in snapshots through curtains. A woman stirring something on a stove. A man lifting a toddler overhead. Teenagers sprawled on a couch watching television. They took my keys. I built an empire. They wanted me frozen out. I learned to generate my own warmth. The glass in my hand caught the light. I raised it. Toward the complex. Toward Adelaide inside, discussing expansion plans. Toward every single person who showed up tonight. And toward myself. Standing here on solid ground. Ground I built with my own bleeding hands.